Demonstrators at Parliament have condemned New Zealand's record on refugees, saying the government should match Australia's generosity. New Zealand currently lets in 750 refugees annually, plans to increase that to 1,000 next year. More than 100 people gathered outside Parliament today to mark World Refugee Day, calling on politicians to significantly lift the country's refugee quota and asking individual MPs to pledge their support to that campaign. Our reporter Catherine Hutton went along.
Karim Shah is from Syria, forced to leave his homeland after authorities found out he was organising protests against the government. He was given a week to get out of the country.
In Syria, you're a criminal if you try to say anything against the government. You would be just accused of terrorism. You would be described as an anarchist.
Fadima Aboka left Yemen 4 years ago with her husband. She says her new home is very different to the one she left behind.
There is so many rules that you need to follow and you can't break them. And if you do, you're going to pay for that.
Anna Mendez came to New Zealand 10 months ago as part of the family reunification program after her father was forced to flee Colombia. Like the other refugees, she spoke of the delight of living in New Zealand.
Everyone deserves a good life with freedom and with a place where you can realize your dreams, because sometimes in your country you cannot.
On a per-person basis, New Zealand ranks 97th in the world for accepting refugees. Protest organiser Murdoch Stevens, who founded the Doing Our Bit campaign 4 years ago, says there are 2 reasons why New Zealand should increase its refugee quota.
To offer protection to people who don't have a government, they don't have a home, they've been driven out of their land through no fault of their own. And secondly, because if you look at the numbers, we're really not pulling our weight. So if we want to be seen as a humanitarian nation, then we need to increase it to the likes of similar countries like Australia, Canada, Ireland, who do between 3, 4 or 5 times as much as us. So it's not making us a world leader, it's really just getting up to the middle of the pack.
Mr Shah says New Zealand's quota is far too low, lagging well behind Australia and other developed countries. He thinks it's a question of knowledge.
People do not know the numbers, so it's actually expected for people to be afraid for their jobs, to be afraid for how their government spends their money. But for the case of New Zealand, the problem is people do not know that this quota has been in place for decades.
Mr Stevens agrees.
There was a poll last week that said a quarter of New Zealanders thought we took 10,000 people or more. So there's a quarter of New Zealanders who will be pretty happy with the Green Party going down to 5,000 from whatever they thought it was. Yeah, there is a lack of knowledge, and I don't blame people. People have their own concerns.
That same poll found only a quarter favouring increasing the quota to more than 1,000, with 3/4 supporting 1,000 or less. Back at Parliament and the protest of the mostly white urban crowd, believing the quota should be doubled.
This is a global crisis and I'm a little embarrassed that New Zealand, we're not doing our bit.
I think doubling the quota should be the start. I think that having a sponsorship program where people can sponsor people to come like Canada would be a great response. Yeah.
Mr Stevens now plans to take his campaign to 17 centres from Invercargill to Whangarei.